Hey everybody, this is Brett Ingram, and this is the optYOUmize podcast, the show that helps entrepreneurs build their dream business and dream life. Today we're talking with Roy Coughlan, entrepreneur and podcast coach. He's had over 20 companies across 5 different countries and 5 podcasts, all in the top 1%. I'm super excited about this because I love podcasting, and I also think it's a perfect vehicle for entrepreneurs and anyone with a message to share. So, with that, welcome, Roy, and thanks a lot for joining us.
Yep. Thank you very much for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. So, I have a lot of questions I want to ask you. I was, doing some research and everything else, but I do want to start off a little bit with your background. So, your journey as an entrepreneur actually started when you were 9 years old. Can you share with us how it all started for you and what sort of made you interested in entrepreneurship in the first place?
I was washing cars, delivering leaflets at 9. Then at 11, I was doing a newspaper round. I did that all the way through college. Then when I was 14, with the money from the newspaper, bought a lawnmower, went around cutting grass and doing things like that for a few years. When I was 18, I was buying and selling motorbikes. I'd buy a motorbike, paint it a bit, and sell it and make a few £100. It was just kind of always in me. And then I studied construction economics and management, and then started working for, one of the biggest mechanical contractors in Ireland. Then I kind of worked my way up. I was just on site doing AutoCAD first, and then started running a lot of projects, and then went with another company and was a regional manager with them. And basically it was kind of still in my body to be entrepreneurial, and met a Polish girl, went to Poland just kind of visiting her parents. I saw property was cheap, so set up a company selling Polish property. It was originally for Irish investors, but in the end I was getting English, American, kind of international investors. And it's kind of from there just kind of kept going and never went back working for anybody since then. That's I set that company up about 19 years ago, but moved eventually. I wasn't planning to move to Poland, but eventually, so I'm 17 years in Poland now.
Wow. Yeah, so I guess, if it's sort of in our blood, if it's in our DNA to be entrepreneurs, I guess we're sort of always looking for that angle or that opportunity. I know it's your story resonates with me a lot because as a kid growing up, I had a couple of paper routes. I used to with one of my friends, we would sell chestnut necklaces door to door with a wheelbarrow, paper routes, whatever I could do also. And I actually mowed lawns a little bit as well, shoveled snow. Where we are, we used to get a decent amount of snow, and so we'd walk up and down the street on snow days, and you get out early so that way you're first with the shovel. You're knocking on doors. Could I shovel your driveway? So it's sort of I sort of love that, just that entrepreneurial spirit. I just think in general it's something that's so admirable. So you started actually a lot of companies, and you shared with us certainly the one there. Can you give us an idea of some of the companies that you started, and sort of what your impetus was or what inspired you to do that?
So there was a good few related to property. So one was selling property, but then I created syndicates. So I bought a big commercial property. So that was a company. Then I bought a development with a few people to build apartments. So I built 30 apartments, built housing project with another one. And there was a few companies connected with that. Then there was I was always kind of looking at tax optimization. So sometimes I'd set up a company just to, reduce my tax bill because this is the best way of actually doing it. And what I've learned, because a lot of times people they set up a few companies, is more than your accountant, because sometimes people they kind of just transfer. Okay, you tell me what I owe. And there was times, I remember there was one time the Irish, they were assessors as well. So they were a high-level kind of accountancy company. And they said, okay, you owe X. And I bought a book, it was called Tax Magic. It was written by a guy that worked for the revenue. And I went through it, page to page, highlighted things. And I said to him, can I do this, this, this? Yeah. And I got a tax rebate. And from that moment, I kind of realised, like, I don't know, accountants usually like tax collectors, because unless you ask them, they never say, hey, go away, do this, do this. There's very few really care. It's like they just kind of process, and people think, okay, just hand it to them, give them the box, people just get receipts. And it's like, I'm constantly looking, and with different companies that I've got, I look at the start, okay, what's the best way to reduce, like, so now I've got an Estonian company, because the corporation tax, you don't pay it, and if you leave the money there, and when you take it out, there's a double taxation agreement, so it works out at 20%. Whereas a lot of, like, when I had lots of companies in Poland, it was like, even if you didn't get paid, you were paying the VAT. And that could nearly cripple you at times, because sometimes you could wait 3 months before you got paid.
Yeah.
And like, if you owed the revenue money, within 3 weeks they were emptying it out of your account. But there was a time I was owed a tax rebate, and it was about €50,000 at the time. And they were allowed up to 6 months, and they waited till the last day on the 6 months. So I do not respect any government institution, because they do not have our best interests at heart. So you look at how you can protect yourself. And when you have to pay VAT, when you don't get paid VAT, that's not a right system. That's not a fair system. So I always look at what's the best option for me. And it's like, at the moment now, I've got a residency in Liberland, and I'm looking at that. It's early days for setting up a company, so I'd be kind of like an innovator. But I'm going, okay. But the one thing is, when you do kind of offshore companies or whatever, setting up a bank account seems to be the difficult thing. So I want to navigate that before I put my foot into it. But it's like, always look, what's the best option for you, what you can do to stop paying, as they say in America, Uncle Sam all the bucks, because they don't do the best thing with it. So why give it to them?
It's a really smart point. I think you're right in the sense that oftentimes we just assume if someone is a professional in whatever field they're in, if we just sort of defer to them and give them our problem, they're going to go ahead and do it. With your example in terms of an accountant, it's very true. Like, they're trained in terms of how to do accounting. That doesn't necessarily mean their goal is to minimize your tax liability. It might just be that they're going to do the paperwork, they're going to do the processing to let you know this is the bill, because ultimately they aren't getting paid based on what they're saving you. They're getting paid based on the work that they're doing. And so, if you were in a situation where you're aligned with, I know from the investment side of things, right? Here in the U.S., one of the big things is, and this has been sort of a conflict now that's been going on for years, but in the old traditional ways, if you invested money in any kind of investment company, they were getting paid based on transactions. So their goal was to get you to move the money as many times as possible, because every time you move it, they're getting paid. Some of them now have more of a fiduciary setup where they only get a percentage or a cut of what they're able to make you. So there you can rest assured that they're going to do their best job, because if you don't make any money, they don't make any money. And I think accounting is really similar like that. If you could find somebody who would say, well, listen, if this is what the normal liability would be, but I can legally find a way to get it less, you give me a percent of what that is extra, you could feel confident that they were going to do the job the right way. But in what you said, I think is very true. In a lot of cases, it's just, here's the amount and you pay it, because it doesn't matter to them. They're getting paid for the service they're providing, not for whether or not they're saving you money. So I actually think that's a really important point. And I also think sort of the underlying message there is, as the business owner, or whatever walk of life you're in, right? No one's going to care as much about you and yourself and your stuff than you are. And so you can find really good and dedicated and talented people and have them as members of your team. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with you in terms of making sure you're doing things the right way to optimize things for yourself. So I really like that. I really like that point of view.
And
Now,
you mentioned about, say, trading. I remember a guy in Poland, and he had this company where he was getting investors to come in, and he was doing the trading for him. And I knew just by having conversations, but I was disgusted. He was getting a kickback, so he was doing loads of trades, And I remember he was making a fortune, and his investors were down like 60%. And there's a load of kickbacks go on in a lot of businesses. And it's like, are people loyal to you? So it's the same with investment as well. Sometimes people think, oh, they know better than me. And a lot of the time, all they care about is actually how much they're making off you, not how much returns you get. If it was a case of, we'll take 20% of an extra that we make on the interest, that, so if you make it 20% gain, we'll take 20% of that. All day long you would do that, but they don't do that. So when it's up, they take a high percentage, and when it's down, they're still taking a percentage. So when you're investing as well with the hard-earned money that you make from your companies or whatever you're doing, your employment, same thing. Be very careful.
Yeah, that's smart. So I know that even though you accomplished a lot, you also had some serious obstacles along the way. How did you go at one point? Apparently, I mean, you obviously were wealthy and doing really great, and then you had a lot of personal liability for in the millions of dollars. What happened there? What transpired to make that be
I
the
kind of asked my
situation?
question as well. What happened there when it happened? It was so I had a load of companies, a lot in real estate, and when the crash happened in the state, it took a while to kind of go across. I was doing very well, and I had a lot of investors in the different syndicates, like the commercial and the development, and they started getting wiped out, and they were big. I mean, like, they were way, I was like the small boy compared to them in a lot, like they were worth, some of them 10 million, 20 million, and they started losing everything. And I thought this was a hiccup, it was going to come right. So I started putting in additional money to the different things. And I said, look, I'll charge you 10% interest a year. If you can't pay it back, I'll just increase my share. Because I thought it would come right. I wanted to be fair with them. They had, they had invested with me. They trusted me when I was doing this. So, I was playing fair with them. They didn't get it
Sure.
right. And then I saw things were kind of, I'm running out of money here. So I went to the bank. I said, hey, I want to split the commercial. Can I have interest only? I'll break it into three. Done the same in Ireland. I had three properties in Ireland, and they were interest only, and I had them rented out. So they were cash positive. So then they
Okay.
changed it. So as things went on, basically for those that wouldn't kind of have been in this storm, there was, if you had a pulse, the banks were throwing money at you. And then it went to the stage you could have 50% deposit and you weren't getting a loan. They just turned off the tap. So there was a lot of carnage in it. So when I asked the bank, hey, I need to keep this at interest only, they wouldn't. So I knew I was in trouble because it went from making money to losing a lot. And the same with the commercial. As soon as I missed payment, they sent in the bailiffs. And this was a property that I'd halved the actual expenses and I doubled the rent. But what happened is, as the banks were taking all the property off people, they started renting Class A in the city centre for half the rent what I was getting. So my biggest tenants were like, hey, we're leaving, can you match it? And I was like, no way. And I just thought I'll just rent it out. And I had to just divide it up. So I was using construction money then to split big areas into smaller ones to just try. And eventually it was missing payment. So sent in the bailiffs. What they told, don't pay me, pay them. Then they stopped paying the water, the electricity, so they got cut off. All the tenants left. Then you have people on the street coming and robbing the copper and whatever thing that glittered, and they
Oh,
decimated a property that was actually beautiful. And so, like, with all that, then I had over 100 court cases. And the problem is, usually with a limited liability company, it's like, lesson learnt. Wash your hands. Okay, let's get going again. Just like our journey earlier, like, your
yeah.
lawnmower breaks and you start doing something else.
Yeah.
And nobody told me, like, you think a solicitor has your back and you think accountants kind of let you know what's going on. Nobody told me I was personally liable in Poland as the president of all these different companies. So that's why
Wow.
I became personally liable for about 5 million. And it was like, I had loads of kind of court cases and I was seeing the corruption. Like, say, that commercial property that was worth about 1.25 million. So the way that the auction works is, it's the first auction is at 75%, the second is 50, and what they do is they make it look like it's actually advertised. And I have seen this happen in a few countries. So you don't experience it till you know what's happening, then you're paying attention.
Right.
But they put a screenshot up so they can prove to you, hey, we advertise it and nobody turned up. That was their plan. So then they try to get their own cronies to buy it. And so thankfully there was a guy I knew, bought that, took it with the debt, so that took nearly $1 million off me straight away. But I got nothing, I lost everything, but at least there wasn't $1 million on my back. And then another one with houses, and they bribed the people. I was advised, don't go in there, because if you go in there, they'll kind of make note of it and everything. So I had people in there, they bribed the people in the room that were bidding, and they had their own cronies buy it. And I was looking forward to that one to see, but that kind of disappeared. It's like they kind of knew what happened. But it was just the same, the Irish properties. It was like they were selling the properties without even advertising what was going on. And then when I checked it, it was like they weren't sold at all. It was like they put them all into a kind of a fund and just sold them. It's like the likes of BlackRock and different companies coming in buying these as a block, which is illegal the way they've done it. So I was in the High Court fighting this. First time, I kind of had them on technicality and information, so just gone. And I thought, all right, this is it. And then they came again, and I said to the judge, I said, I've already gone through this. They can do it as often as they want, he said. That's what he said to me. Yeah, they have unlimited books. So I'm in there, and usually when you're fighting the banks, like the way this was done, you think it's like me, defendant, plaintiff with our solicitor. No, there's no room with one judge with about 150 usually bailiffs, or not bailiffs, barristers. They're the expensive attorneys, solicitors. Most people weren't turning up. I was there representing myself because I was wiped out. I couldn't afford one anyway. But it was like I was just watching them, and it was so a judge is basing your case on just having a 2-second look at what's going on. And people are personally liable for this for the rest of their life. Hence why a load were thrown in the towel. And I was listening. One woman went in, she had a piece of paper, she was shaking. She said, my husband has died from cancer. It's stressed, I don't know what to do. I'm very sorry for you. Bang, rule in favour of the banks, plus interest, plus penalties. Somebody else said, we got KPMG to do the interest payments, and we were overcharged €15,000. When was that? 2 years ago. Should have took it up with them then. Bang, rule in favour of the banks, plus interest, plus penalties. And I'd say something, and they go, all right, we'll bring it back the next day. 8 times I had to go back and forth because I was fighting it, and I was fighting the big boys. I was fighting the barrister, and I was catching them on lies the whole time. And what it is, there's an affidavit. So they made an affidavit basically saying that I done this, all lies. So then I responded, plus I gave my affidavit, and I had about 40 odd points. One of the points was there was a billionaire in Ireland who got a write-off. And I said, how come I got an offer of 200,000 on a 220,000 mortgage, and just to show you how bad things was, this property was worth 400,000, it dropped to 125. I had an offer of 200. I said full and final settlement. They sold it for less and came after me for the excess. So then I was like saying, hey, you've given a billionaire a write-off. What about me? It went 8 times, and in the end I lost, but I didn't lose on interest, and I didn't get caught for the cost of the barrister because I was fighting it so long. And I said, I'm going to go to the European Union about this. This is pure fraud. And I was told you have to appeal. In some countries, if you appeal, it's just on that amount. In Ireland, it's not. It was basically you were opening the books again for the interest and penalties plus the new costs. So it worked out, just one property was about 68,000, I think. So it could have been that versus $500,000. And I couldn't take that risk because I saw everybody was being just knocked down by the fraud. And there's a guy I've had on my podcast a few times. He showed that everybody was overcharged interest. And they basically, none of the media or anything gave him, they just destroyed him. They're just attacking him the whole time. He said, I'm the only person. And he's, like, I've read his book, he's got proof of everything, and they're just knocking him. So you can't fight a corrupt system. And I think the way the world has gone now, everybody's looking at, they're kind of going, this isn't right. So it's like everything is like that. So it's like when you look at solicitors and everything, same thing. Don't just hand the solicitor your power of attorney thinking he's got my best interest at heart. Because any case, I mean, I've had over 100 cases. Each time I'm sitting down, sometimes I represent myself, sometimes in Poland I had a solicitor, and I'd spot something or I'd be listening, and I go, he said this, say this. The reason I won, or I copped once, I was up with the judge, and I said, that's not my signature. Or, because I used to put a 0 and a line through it from my zeros. I said, they forged that. And I go back to a previous page. So there was times that I felt the judges were against me, and then I just switch it like that, and there's no way the solicitor would have won. So sometimes people, they just sit back and they let the solicitor do their thing. Solicitors they're on the clock. They're just, so
Yeah. Yeah.
unfortunately, and if you're in business, most people will know. Unfortunately, when you're making money, people are they're trying to take it out of your pocket. So the same thing, accountants and solicitors, you have to make sure
Wow.
you're looking after yourself.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. What a story. Wow. I mean, to even come through that and not like just freak out for the stress would be enough. I mean, geez. So, all right, so let's switch gears. Let's talk about podcasting. You started multiple podcasts. You recorded over 1,400 episodes, but you also used to be really shy. So, what inspired you to go into podcasting, and how did you transform yourself from being shy to being confident in speaking?
It's actually related to the whole story that I've just said. So, I, when I was working in construction for mechanical, I hated the meetings. I was very competent at buying stuff. I was getting better prices than the purchasing department. They couldn't understand it. Everything, I was brilliant at watching the costs, making profit. But the meeting, I hated it. My voice used to go. I sounded basically like Mr. Bean, that was like, it was just the voice just went. So when I lost all this stuff, I went to an event and it was What's Your Quest? It was A-Fest. It was like Mind Valley event. And I was there, and it was just then I said, I don't like what's going on. I need to fight this. I need to stop people throwing in the towel because it's not their fault. This is all orchestrated. So it was at that I decided I'm going to expose this. But the other thing is there was great speakers there. And I said, I need to become a good speaker. And I always said, I'm not a speaker. And I just changed my mind frame. And I came back and I said, all right, I'm going to join Toastmasters. And I suppose just to give context to people, with my shyness, even though I could go around to people asking them, do you want your grass cut? Do you want to buy an Echo, a newspaper? That was no problem for me. I don't know why. But well, like when I was younger, I wouldn't go into the shop. I get my friend to go into the shop. When I was 18, I wouldn't go up to the bar when it was my round. I give my friend the money to go. So there was that shyness always there. Same with the kind of meetings. But if somebody was kind of wronging me, I'd always kind of stand up and they'd get shocked because they'd think I was the quiet guy. But I don't
Yeah.
tolerate kind of abuse kind of thing. It's like, you must be right. And so I came back. I said, okay, I'm going to join a Toastmasters. I couldn't go on my own because, I needed somebody to hold my hand to go with me. Went there, said, this is brilliant. And my friend said, no, we don't have time to do this. And I was too shy to go back on my own. And the only reason I joined a Toastmaster is that a new club was forming a few months later. So I went there thinking this is all new people. But as it turned out, it's like half are new and half are existing Toastmasters. That's how they form a club. They just kind of said, will you join? Yeah. Will you do a speech next week? Yeah. And I said, there's no more no. It's like, I just go head in and I joined the other club, formed my own club, an entrepreneur club for in the mornings. I became a coach of a Finnish club. I entered every competition, came first in a load of competitions, got into the final of 5 countries, done open mic, TEDx, done open comedy, and just went from one extreme to the other. And it was like, I started looking at TEDx videos, reading books and stuff. But it showed me how many belief systems have I had in my life, telling myself a story. I'm just not a speaker. I'm not just this. And it's like, don't use that crutch and let me be an example. And that's why I was saying how shy I actually was. I went on stage in Mind Valley and actually I was like, I wasn't afraid. It's not that you don't get the, nerve, like if I'm doing a competition or stuff, but you'd always
Yeah.
have something. But it's like, but it was the first time, and I remember I was like, this is the first time I've never, and like you're speaking in front of a lot of people, and I was like, and I just said, no, don't be ever having a story to hold you back.
That's great. I mean, and what a story about that just the power of sort of belief and human will, right? You sort of grew up with this idea that you were shy and that just sort of becomes part of your identity, and then you just decided to change it. So yeah, it's uncomfortable at first, right? Because you got to put yourself out there. Saying that you're changing it is one thing, but then you just do still have to put yourself out there. But what you find with a lot of stuff like that is the fear of it is worse than the actual thing. Once you start doing it, you get more and more comfortable, you get better at it. And that is the way that we master any kind of a skill. So that's fantastic. So what do you see as the advantages of podcasting for entrepreneurs? Like obviously you've started podcasts, I've started a podcast. What are reasons that people should start a podcast?
Well, one, if you have a message, don't hold it to yourself. Make sure that you're getting the message out. So my first one was speaking. So because of the Toastmasters, I knew a lot of speakers, so that became the first one. I done a Polish one, learn Polish. Like the title of yours, optYOUmize, I think is brilliant. It's like it's you're playing with words, but straight away. It tells you kind of what it does on the tin. So my Polish one, learn Polish. It does the crypto podcast. So that's one thing. Make sure if you have a message or you can help people, go away and do that. Two, get the name, because sometimes people they create a fancy name or whatever. But if I ask you what is his podcast about or whatever, most of the time you don't know, and it's like people are then kind of going, what do I need to do, whatever. Let it keep as simple as you can and try to get a domain that's kind of similar to what you're doing, because then you make it easy. And even if you say, hey, give me a thumbs up or whatever, and you mention the website, you're not kind of giving it something totally different. It makes it easy for your listeners to learn. And if I look at the different things that happen, one, because I've interviewed, I don't know how many it is now. It's like so many that I've done. But my life has changed because of guests that I've come on. So my thought process, my belief system, was like somebody come on and they'd say about something on health or whatever, and I go, that's interesting, it's not what I thought, but I wouldn't just take it that they've just said that. I'd go in and start researching it. But because they came on, they opened the book, and then I started going and I go, okay, my life is different because of this. And then you start, like for example, because of the law side of things, I started going down sovereignty, common law, UCC, and I realised the power of the signature. So then I'm getting a load of people on, and because I've experience in kind of writing to people, getting bailiffs to back off, getting courts to back off, because of my experience, because it's like, hey, you don't control me, I was born a free person. I understand if someone's doing a criminal activity, yeah, that's different. But this is like, you cross the street and they're going, ooh, and there's no cars coming. They're like, you go, who's the injured party? And you get two police officers looking at you like a dazzled, like a dazzled rabbit, like in the headlights. And so you start learning your own power. And then, like, even with the property kind of things, there was people just trying to abuse you, and I started not tolerating it. And most people put their head down because they know, deep down they know they're wrong. And you have to, don't bow to someone in a suit or in a uniform or in a white coat. You just kind of do what's right. So that came from podcasting, that actually learning a lot of this stuff. And then you can kind of go down whatever angle. Regarding clients, with the marketing and everything, because that's an open book, you try all there. But then you can get people on. You can get somebody on that's actually specializing in something. And because you have some experience in something, you can talk about what you know, they'll throw it back, and then you apply it. So you're actually helping your business as well. And like you can, I've made a business on it. Like I help people get on shows and different things like that. And I kind of partnered with a few people as well. So you can actually get customers. So sometimes people say, oh, my thing is unique, it's only for this. So you might have a unique business. Why not get your potential customers to be on your show? And you will actually make a good connection. And what's the chances of you actually closing a deal as opposed to picking up the phone on a cold call? Yeah. So you might have 10 listeners, but you could get a massive client based on how you start. So there's a load of different ways to actually make money. And sometimes people think, okay, I'll get it. And they're looking at, like, say, Mr. Beast and Joe Rogan, and they think, I'm going to get millions of downloads. And the one thing that I say to people is, if you're doing it for the numbers, because you can go in, you can buy everything, and it's like you can pretend you've got 10 million followers,
Yeah.
and then basically by actually looking at the hearts, the thumbs up, and everything, the people that are actually doing the different thing. But it's if you have 20 people, like if you were doing a speech and you went to a Toastmaster meeting or any meeting, and you go to a hotel room and there's 20 people there, you would be delighted. Yet if you have 20 viewers on your podcast, you're going, oh, I'm throwing in the towel. But if they keep coming back, you've got an audience, and then you kind of start getting creative with your marketing. So for example, one of the things that I would advise podcasters to do is, they put it up on Facebook and different things, but find groups. So for example, the Polish one, I find people that are looking, so foreigners in Poland, like in Chicago, New York, there's different communities of Polish people for that. And a lot of the time, like a local will marry a Pole, vice versa, so they have their spouse or their kids And so by going into these groups, I'm putting it out. So that's got millions of downloads. And I think I'm in about 50 groups. Does it take time? Yeah. Eventually, I got somebody to be doing that for me. But it's kind of being creative in your marketing and what you're doing instead of just creating, like a lot of time people, they create their podcast and then they go on to the next episode, and like they spend a lot of time, like I know you spent a lot of time, you've went through what into the story, and you didn't just turn up, because there is times, you probably know it yourself if you've been on shows, sometimes you turn up and people don't even know what we were going to talk about, they just kind of wing it.
Yeah.
And by creating like a decent conversation, I think that's the priority. It's like, if you have a good conversation, you know you can take good clips from this, right? You can use good clips. When you put the clips on TikTok, Instagram, different places like YouTube Shorts, and there's a good chance then people will listen and go, oh, I like that style. But what most people don't, they don't put the link. So I make sure I put the link, make it easy. You think people are going to go, oh, Brett, I must find his podcast. I think this is great. People are lazy. They're not going to do that. Make it easy for them. If they listen to a clip, full show here. And that's what I do. And it's just be consistent with all the different things. So it's not difficult. I'm not a technical person. So for those that think, oh, you have to be very technical for podcasting, no, it's actually very easy. I mean, I think you're on Megaphone, which is like Anchor, I believe it is. Yep. So it's simple. It's very easy how they do it, and then you look at the analytics. So for those that are podcasting, thinking of podcasting, you can look at your analytics and you can see what's happening here. Because sometimes people have like a 5-minute spew at the start. I mean, I've tried a lot of things. I used to have music and stuff like that, and I was like, no, people are skipping. They're not listening to that, so take it out. Yeah. And if you look at the big, like I listened to Joe Rogan, I listened to Patrick Bet David, a few others, they don't have 5 minutes of that. They just go straight into the conversation. But it's still good to let people know what you're doing. So, I change it now. I like a 5-minute kind of intro, just saying, hey, I've got these other shows, I have a QR code. So I like, I usually do it on Zoom, so I'd have the green screen that you see behind me, but I have a QR code. So I encourage people to do that as well. And if you're a business person or you're speaking somewhere, make sure you do that at the end as well. Have your QR code, because now people take up their phone, they point, press, and they have all your information. Make it easy for them. Because sometimes you go, hey, you'll find me on all the social media. You think they're going to go away and go into Instagram and check, oh, where will I find Brett there? No, they won't. You have to. And even when I have guests, what I do is sometimes they go, just go to my website and then you find it on my socials. And I say, no, I'll actually go in and I take all the socials. Yeah. Because what happens is people have a favourite. They're either into TikTok or into Instagram, but they're not onto the 5 of them. And if you make it easy, if they like the thing, they'll just go in and they'll follow. And then there's a good chance they come back, and eventually they become like a fan, which in turn could be a customer or whatever. So it's easy, but it's just being consistent and have systems, I think, is the secret to podcasting.
Yeah, there's a lot that I could touch on in there. I think that, your first point, which is really important, is, it's about the engagement. It's not about the numbers. We live in such a transactional age these days that people get obsessed with numbers and the image of things. But the fact is, if you have a dedicated audience, even if it's small, and those people care about your message, they care about you, they get to know what you're all about, that's far more powerful than just having a gigantic number of, downloads or whatever else it is. And so I think that's super important. And I also think, as you mentioned, making it easy, but also making sure that the content is good. And that's why, for me, if you're gonna take the time to come on my show, I'm gonna take the time to do some research so I know who you are as a guest and what kind of value that you can provide for the audience, and also what I can do to help support you in what you're doing, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. But the other thing that I love that you said, and you didn't say it in this way, but sort of, this is the way that I heard it, is that, when you have guests on your show, one of the most amazing things about that is that you're getting sort of a PhD in education for whatever field they're in. You're getting somebody else's experience in a one-on-one scenario and situation that, you would pay a lot of money to get in a lot of cases, right? And so the idea that you can have a discussion and you can sort of take it where you want it to go to get the answers that you need in a dedicated way like that is so educational. I've grown so much, I've learned so much just by having people on the show and interviewing. And I think that there's a lot of value in that, as you said, in terms of ways you could build your business, partnerships, all kinds of different things. So there's so many other benefits beyond just how much money can I make for my podcast this week. And I think that that is really, as long as you come at it from a place of passion because you love what you do, you can't lose if you're just consistent and you just keep going with it. So to that end, I actually have a question for you about podcast interviews because I know one of the biggest problems or challenges that people have is finding great guests, right? So they want to get a guest. Either they don't know where to find them, or if they find a guest they want to get, they don't know how to get them to come on their show. What tips do you have for someone who's trying to book guests for their show?
What I've done is at the start it was kind of just you'd reach out to the different people you know, ask them. So when you have a guest on, like the other day now I had a guy back for the third time on the crypto, and I know he's got like over 200 episodes. And I asked him, I said, look, is there any that... So he said, no problem. And I said, listen, go through my database of all the episodes I've got. Anyone you want, I'm happy to do a warm introduction. So, you partner with a few people as well. You just kind of like, if you saw somebody on my show and you said, Roy, is any chance... I'd be happy to. It's like the episode, that's the other thing. You build, like sometimes people, they're kind of take, and they eventually... Like that happened to me a lot. Loads of people are just trying to ask him for all the different tips. You just close the door on them people. But there's plenty they share. So when there's new systems coming out and everything, they're bringing it. So this matchmaker, we met on Podmatch. Podmatch is fantastic. Like Alex's wife and there's three. They are from the heart. I mean, they have made podcasting so much easier. So, like I have that for 4 of my, it's actually 6 podcasts that I've got. I've got the Podfather as well, which is helping podcasters. But like, they have made it easy. The other thing is I do live ones. So there's about 6 of us and we bring in different guests. So they're bringing in people as well. And sometimes, I might interview someone and then I bring them onto the show with them and vice versa. So like, that kind of helps as well. And the other thing is like, with the awakening. So David, I think it was my 9th episode, and everyone was like, how did you manage to get him? I asked. So sometimes people think, oh, there's no way, and you'd be surprised as well. He was a lovely guest. There's sometimes people come in and they're so nice before, you have a little chat before, after, whatever, and there's others, the minute it's finished, they're pressing the leave button. It is what it is. Don't ever take it. But, sometimes people, they've just got their schedule. One thing I always do is I always ask, because especially when it's a kind of high-end person, you'd ask them, how's their tip? Because I've got a call, I have a hard end on this. So you're making sure you're watching the time and you're kind of going, okay, we'll make sure we finish it with that. And it's just, there's a few platforms, but you'll find what works for you. And always ask, because everyone, or go into little groups. There's a load, there's the Polab Cab, there's the collaboration, and there's a load of different ones. And one thing I do when I go on different shows, like some people, they're kind of looking at the numbers, and for me it's about the message. So I'm always like, but there's sometimes there's people would ask me to go on the show, and then they go, show me your numbers, and I'm gone. They're gone. I'm not interested in that, because they're not coming from the heart. They're not coming for, they're kind of just looking for what's in it for me. And for example, I mean, you've had a lot of shows. So there's a lot of people that are trying to promote their book. I've in my form, send me the book. I don't like PDFs. I'm on the computer too much. I want to get away from the computer. And lots, like one came again now actually it's just there, like a guy who's going to be on my show, sent the book, great, I look forward to it. But loads of people, they won't, or they'll say, oh, I only send digital. And like they're trying to tap into something that you've built for years. So it's like, just make sure that if you are doing stuff, at the start I used to go buy the book. I'd go away and buy the book, and I was like, I'm promoting his business, and I'm actually going away buying his book. This formula isn't working, and so you start learning a few things. And then I kind of, like in my form, I've got a few things. That's something you could do yourself, or some of the listeners, is I just kind of like, hey, do you want to jump the queue, or do you want shorts created and stuff like that? I just give options. Plus I give my services, so I list the services that I provide. I'm never trying to sell on the show. They've already ticked the box. I'm interested in sponsorship. I'm interested in this. I'm interested in that. And you make it easy for them. So, that's one of the things that you can be doing.
Yeah, I love the message of making things easy. I agree with that. I know from all the marketing sort of coaching I've ever done, and when I've done my own marketing too, it's always seems silly to people that you have to include like a very clear call to action. And they always think, well, but I have the offer on the page and everything looks good. I'm like, but you have to literally say to people, click the button now. I said, I know it sounds silly, but it does actually impact it. They've studied this over and over and over again. And if you leave it to, somebody else has to figure it out or make a decision or whatever, your conversion rates go down. If you have the big button and it's click here and that's the one option you've got, your conversion rates go up. So I said, look, I'm not going to pretend to be a psychologist. I'm just going to tell you that study after study shows it flat out works. So um, yeah, no, I think making it easy, and I love the message, that you're getting at under the surface with the rest of it is, look for win-win, look for people that are interested in partnerships that are fine, understanding that it's, they're getting something because they're getting the promotion or whatever, but they're also willing to give, because that's what it's all about. Everybody wins when we're all willing to give and willing to contribute and everything else, and we don't always have our hand out for what we can get. And so to your point, I also am not a big transactional guy. If all it is about is numbers or this or that, you know what I mean? Like I want a great story. When I look to book guests on the show, um, is it great if they have a massive following? Of course it is. Do I screen people for that? No. If you have a great story, if you have a great message, if you have something I think my audience will love and I want to talk to you because you're somebody I would talk to over a cup of coffee at the local diner or whatever, then great, let's do it. And that's sort of the way that I see it. So, um,
And
so
just
I
on that,
know,
actually, because
yeah.
sometimes people think, I get the big boy, oh, he's got 1 million downloads or whatever, I'll do very well. It's not how it works. There was a guy, he was 16, he was in Toastmasters. You have to be 18 to be in Toastmasters, but he joined under his dad. He was so excited to be on the show. I was just inspired by the way he was doing everything. He was so excited, he was telling everyone. He's still number one on my speaking podcast.
So
Not
funny.
some of the famous guys. And what
Right.
happens is a lot of these famous guys, they're not going to share it. Whereas you get some people, maybe it's their 10th podcast or new, or what, they're delighted. They're sharing it. They're commenting. The big people don't do that. So we make an assumption. If I land this person, my podcast is going through the roof. I've had some massive people on the show. Yeah, do you get okay numbers for that? Yes, because there's people curious or whatever. But it's just the consistency of the other ones. And like I kind of give an email as well. I go, look, if you do this, this, this. Some people do it. Some people don't even respond. Thanks for being on the show. You give them all the links. And others do exactly as you ask. You say, look, if you comment, if you thumbs up. It's a game. We're both doing it, but it helps the algorithms, and by them doing it, they're tapping into my audience and vice versa. You're both kind of promoting it, but what happens is the numbers get 3 or 4 times than if they don't do it. Some people get it, they'll do it, others don't.
I agree with you completely. I actually just got a message yesterday from somebody that I had as a guest, and we had a great episode and everything, and she proceeded to like tell me I'm going to share it in this way, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I left her your review. I mean, I didn't even ask for half of that stuff, and she went way above and beyond because she enjoyed being on in the episode. And she isn't going to be like the biggest name brand guest that you've ever heard of, but I mean, as a podcaster, I totally appreciate that because obviously it benefits me too. So she's clearly in it for the win-win, and I think that's those are the kinds of people that you want to build with, because I just think it's super important. So, all right, so where can people find your products, services? Where can they connect with you?
So it's myname.com, roycoughlan.com. I used to have a different one with a bio.link/podcaster, but I was thinking, this isn't really working. So I said, all right, I've got my own domain name. So it's like roycoughlan.com. So anything, my podcast, any businesses I'm doing, everything is there.
All right, perfect. Thanks for that. And the one last question that I have to ask, because I think it's important, it's always interesting to hear everybody's unique perspective, is what's your number one tip for success as a business owner or an entrepreneur?
love what you do. Because if you're thinking on a Sunday night, oh Jesus, Mike, I don't want to be doing this, you have to. Monday morning is as nice as Saturday if you're working or whatever. When you love what you do, it's not a job. I love podcasting. I love all the different things I do. And it's the time I realised this pain, like property, not just when I lost the voice, kept going on with different. It was like, I'm no longer enjoying this. And I've had a lot of businesses, they reach their cycle. You go, I'm not bouncing out of bed for this. So I would say the one thing is find something you love and don't make it a job. Just make it part of your life.
That's great advice. Perfect. Thanks a lot. All right, and with that, it's just about time to wrap things up. I want to thank you again, Roy, so much for sharing all your insights and great tips with us. Visit Roy, as Americans would say, Coughlan.com, ROYCOUGHLAN.com, to find his podcast and all of his other businesses he's working on. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, remember, no matter what you want from your business and your life, don't compromise, optimize.